Hello, my name is Arturo Mendiola Jr., and I am presenting on my artist that I chose, Jacob Lawrence, for the arts appreciation class. Jacob Lawrence was born on September 7th, 1917, into the Lawrence family, a family that had migrated from South Carolina to New Jersey in hopes of finding better economic opportunities. Um, Soon after, they moved to Pennsylvania. Then, a couple of years later, they moved to Harlem, New York. During this time, Harlem was going through what is commonly known as the Harlem Renaissance. And during this period, it started to become a birthplace for many black culture musicians, writers, scientists, and artists. In Harlem, Jacob Lawrence received his education. Throughout the United States, it was difficult for an African American to attend art schools or academies. However, this was possible in Harlem. In Harlem, he attended a arts academy. Charles Austin was one of the main influences, and he was also one of his teachers during this time. He took various amount of workshops that were led by him. In these classes, Jacob was taught non-representational drawing and was encouraged to create pictorial language on personal decisions about space. As he grows up in Harlem, Jacob Lawrence recognizes that Harlem is a vibrant community full of resiliency, which gives him inspiration for most of his work. During this period, or a little bit before this period, there was a mass migration of over 2 million African Americans from rural South to the northern cities. Although Harlem, New York covers only about little less than 2 square miles, it housed nearly a quarter million African American migrants from the South during this time. Lawrence's family was just a handful out of the couple million Americans that seek freedom from spiritual, physical, and psychological and legal abuse that they faced in the South, or as it was known back then, the empire of the Jim Crow and the Ku Klux Klan. The problems that the African American community faced during this time were not simply vanished by moving to northern cities. As they moved to the north, they began to face other challenges that existed for them. Jacob Lawrence began creating a series of paintings. Each series had up to 60 paintings that depicted major themes, some of the challenges that the African American community faced during this time, such as hardships of poverty, the ghettos, the violence surrounding them, and the upheaval during the civil rights movement in the 1960s. Lawrence was also amazed by the colorfulness that surrounded him in Harlem. He was fascinated by the patterns, the brick walls, the variety of shapes and colors found throughout the different patterns on billboards. So you could say that Jacob Lawrence's inspiration for most of his painting came from the hardships that the African American community faced within Harlem, but also all of the positive, colorful, different patterns that could be found within Harlem as well. Some might argue that by depicting some of the challenges that the African American community faced, Jacob Lawrence would be an activist. However, he never saw himself as an activist. He refers to himself as just simply reporting what was going on around him at that time. One aspect that makes him unique is that he heard narratives and then painted them. He researched the lives of influential people throughout the African American community, such as Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, and John Brown. In addition, he looked at narratives of oral historians in Harlem, and using all this research, he created paintings to depict what was said during the research. In the early 1940s, he created his most famous narrative series titled The Migration of the Negro, based on personal experiences and recollections of the Harlem community and his research. Here's a painting from that series. This painting is titled The Great Migration. Migration Number 1 by Jacob Lawrence, and it was painted from 1940 to 1941 with tempera paint on hardboard, and it's this one right here. And as you can see, there's a lot of linear movement in the artwork. You can see masses of people moving from the larger crowd into the 3 different entranceways, and they are marked Chicago, New York, and St. Louis. It's essentially formed out of various geometric shapes in different colors and arranged in different ways to form figures of people moving throughout space. Jacob Lawrence really stressed cohesiveness amongst his series. As he painted the various series, he wanted them kind of to have like the same overall look to them. So he took various precautions to make sure that this happened. Some of the precautions that he took was that he would focus on the people and or objects themselves, rather than, he would not focus on that. He would focus on the hues, the intricate shapes that made up the images. So he used tempera as a medium paint because it will keep colors bright for a long period of time, and he had a lot of bright colors that he used throughout his paintings. During the series, he laid out panels throughout his art studio floor, so that way it allowed him to paint one panel at a time while still being able to look at the rest of the panels. So he would, when he did that, he would apply one color at a time to each of his panels, starting with black and then moving on to lighter, brighter colors. Jacob Lawrence was also widely known for placing a certain color into all shapes of one kind. For example, all triangles would be green and all circles would be yellow. Here we can see some of his other artwork where he uses, you see the African American community and their like daily struggles, ironing clothes. But you still see like the bright colors depicted. Here we can see an African American community member washing the floorboards, and as you can see, the background, which is made out of squares, is blue, and then the rectangles that make the floorboards are one color, and the circular colors are here. There's red color, and then the unregular shapes are the whites. So there you can see how he used different colors within different shapes. And that is pretty much all of the presentation. Thank you.